What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right, man, in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about Bob Arum, Terence Crawford, and Errol Spence Jr. and something that was said about that fight in an interview that took place with Steven Espinoza. He was talking about Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury's fight, but he brought up the Lomachenko-Garcia fight and the Errol Spence Terence Crawford fight relative to Bob Arum. So I'm going to chop that up real quick. But before I do that, I want to welcome you back to the channel, subscribers. If you were not subscribed, please hit the subscription button. And then after that, you can hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. And also, please check out the live streams that we do every Monday through Friday. Start time between 10:30 and 10:45 a.m. Central Standard Time. Also, check out the Patreon. We got some real good stuff up there. Patreon's growing pretty quick. Really happy about that. And we got a lot of non-boxing talk, political talk, personal life type conversations we have going on there. So I hope that you would attend that. Also, share, like, and all that good old stuff on the video. So there's an article that came out by Keith Eidick. I think it's Eidick. It might be Edick. Sometimes I mess up his name. I forgive me. But it's in the boxing scene, and the article was entitled, Espinoza Will Believe Arum About Wilder Fury When He Acts on It. So pretty much like, I'll believe it when I see it. That's a nice way to say I believe it when I see it. And then, but he talks about several fights. So let me go through what he said, and then I'll share my thoughts on it. He says, conceptually and theoretically, it's very possible. The question is one of intent, because I've heard Arum say there are other fights he's interested in, Crawford Spence or Lomachenko Garcia, and he's done nothing to advance those. Not a single phone call, not a single attempt to make those fights other than talking about them publicly. So really, it's not difficult. I do believe Arum wants it if he says it until he proves differently. I believe it. But what would be much more convincing than him saying it is to actually act on it and take steps to make any of those fights happen, whether it's a Fury rematch or the other big fights. Yeah, so let me give you, what do you call this? How do you call it? Bullshitese. He says he'll believe it when he sees it. And I've said this for a while, man. Now, Errol Spence said something the other day about this fight as well, saying that, Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. was made. So there shouldn't be a reason why the fight between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, Terence Crawford and Errol Spence can't happen further down the road. But like I said, man, like Steven Espinoza says, I will believe it when I see it. We were going back and forth with a lot of conversations on the channel about Errol Spence Jr. ducking Terence Crawford, and I'm not going to let people forget about that. After the fight between Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, when Errol Spence Jr. got on a mic and said that he believed that Bob Arum was all smoke and mirrors and that he was trying to get a fight with Sean Porter, people jumped all on top of him. And right after that, I said, look, you guys got to remember, this is Bob Arum we're talking about. Bob Arum is not really in the business of making big fights. In my opinion, my estimation, it seems more like big fights happen by default when Bob Arum is involved. Like if there's no other way around it, then Bob Arum will make that fight. Bob Arum does not go out of his way to make big mega fights if he believes that fight can be made further down the road and that he can make a significant amount of money before that big fight happens. You know the old saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. If Bob Arum can make a fight between, say, a Manny Pacquiao versus a Tim Bradley, he's going to make that before, because they're both in-house, and Manny Pacquiao more than likely is going to win that fight. He's going to make that before one big fight with Floyd Mayweather Jr., which in my opinion is why it took so long for that Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight to be made. Same thing is going to apply with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. But when I was arguing with people, going back and forth about people, people didn't want to hear it. But then what happens? All of a sudden, there is a negotiation going on for a fight that we thought for sure was going to take place, being Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. They had already fought one time. It was already a pay-per-view fight. It was a highly anticipated fight where both guys were at the very end of the negotiation, seemingly ready to make the fight. And then who jumps out of the tree in between them and hits the brakes on the whole thing? Bob Arum. Like Captain Break 'em Up, there he goes. We don't have the fight. Bob Arum is an impediment to big fights many times. I believe with Mikey Garcia, when Mikey Garcia and Robert Garcia said, look, Mikey would have liked to fight Lomachenko, but he felt that it was going to take Bob Arum and them 2 years to get that fight made. And with the track record of Bob Arum, there's no reason to believe otherwise. There's no reason to believe that Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury is going to be made in 2020. Because if he has any type of momentum, he being Bob Arum has any type of momentum with Tyson Fury, he's going to have Tyson Fury fight a bunch of guys that he can beat easy. Tom Schwartz. Bob Arum took a fight from us, took Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury off the table to serve up a big dose of Tyson Fury versus Schwartz. I thought it was going to be Oscar Rivas. Oscar Rivas was bad enough, but then just to dip down well outside the top 15 and grab Schwartz, that tells you, man, he's trying to milk the moment, trying to wait around, get as many fights as he can get out of the way before he makes that fight. And I believe that that's going to be the same thing going on with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. too. We're going to get fights like Jeff Horn. Look, I mean, what are the last fights with Terence Crawford? They have been Julius Ndungo, Jeff Horn, Jose Benavidez, and Amir Khan. All of those guys, I don't have any problem with the Julius Ndungo fight, because that Julius Ndungo fight was, other than the fact that Terence Crawford had to pay $100,000 out of his own pocket to make the fight happen. But that was a unification fight. Jeff Horn, that was a fight for the WBO title, first one in there. But now to go to Jose Benavidez, a cat with one leg, and now Amir Khan with a guy with a glass jaw. We'll see what happens next, because Errol Spence is not the only guy with a belt at 147 pounds. You also have Keith Thurman. Will they push and try to make a phone call to get Keith Thurman? Terence Crawford, I believe, would take that fight. Terence Crawford would jump at that fight. I don't believe Bob Arum for nothing. But I'm sure as we get closer to the fight with Terence Crawford and Amir Khan, which, by the way, shows you another tendency of Bob Arum's, which is to be a miser. I am seeing next to no promotion other than the videos that I'm doing on YouTube and some other people are doing on YouTube, trying to actually pub up or get some publicity for Terence Crawford versus Amir Khan. This is my second video I've done in 2 days with Terence Crawford, talking at least a little bit about the Amir Khan, trying to get the name, trying to get the conversation going about Terence Crawford. So Terence Crawford fans, don't beat me up too bad in the comment section. I really do want to see his fight do well. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, if his fight does really well in pay-per-view, does that make it more or less likely that the Errol Spence Jr. fight will happen? If Terence Crawford does really well in the pay-per-view, then against Amir Khan, then Bob Arum might say, well, let's do that again with somebody like Kell Brook Or let's try to do that with some. Now, I wouldn't even mind seeing an Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, Kell Brook fight. I think that would be a good fight. But let's see if we can run it back with Jeff Horn or something like that on pay-per-view. But anyway, we'll see what happens. And with that, I'm out. Peace.